You're watching the Wellness Hour, news that makes you healthier. Today's topic, lowering your blood pressure naturally. With us on the show, we have board-certified internist, board-certified also in preventive medicine, Dr. DeRose. Dr. DeRose, welcome to the program.
It's great to be here, Randy.
So your book, 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control, the No Pressure Solution. So you believe you can lower blood pressure naturally without medication?
Oh, I don't just believe it. I've seen it time and time again.
You see it in your practice all the time?
Yeah. Well, I don't see it in my practice all the time today because I'm working with people who I'm trying to help them see this vision. I'm in a new practice setting over the last couple of years. We're trying to cast the vision, but it's challenging. A lot of people, they think the way to handle blood pressure is with conventional medications. And it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle to help people see what we're trying to communicate.
Because you lecture to other medical doctors.
Oh yeah, I gave last year, 6-hour CME program out on the East Coast.
That's continuing medical education.
Okay. Physicians, nurses, they're all there listening to me talk about natural strategies for blood pressure. So physicians are interested, nurse practitioners are interested because we've got an epidemic in America of high blood pressure.
Now, so if they follow the protocol in your book, you're saying 30 days?
30 days.
They'll see a dramatic difference?
The average person sees a dramatic difference. If they really get serious and could read the whole book overnight, they could see it even shorter. But it's a long book. And so we walk people through a 1-month program.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about, on this segment, on nutrition and supplements, but nutrition, of how to lower it through nutrition.
Nutrition is fascinating, Randy. And one of the most fascinating studies, fairly recently, there's something called the Adventist Health Study. It comes out of California, but it's a nationwide study of nearly 90,000 individuals. Some people have heard of Seventh-day Adventists. They have recommended for years eating more plant foods. But it's not a requirement of the church. So there's people in that church group that are eating just like the average American. There's others that are just eating fish with their vegetables and things. Others are what we call lacto-ovo vegetarians, and there's some that are vegans. And they actually looked at their diets and whether it made a difference in blood pressure and diabetes. In fact, tell you a true story.
Okay.
I was showing a study based on the Adventist Health Study, a graph based on that study at a lecture of mine. 6 months later, I saw a patient walking up through a mall or something. Dr. DeRose, I went to your lecture, it changed my life.
Okay.
And this would be a time where you could get a little proud, but I couldn't because the next thing he said to me was, but it was nothing you said. And I'm thinking, came to my lecture, changed his life. It was that graph. It was the graph from this study. He said it changed his life because what it was, Randy, it was a stair step. The more animal products you were eating, the higher the blood pressure, the higher the diabetes. As you go down, get rid of the red meat, your blood pressure comes lower. As you get rid of the fish, it comes lower. As you get rid of the dairy products, it comes lower. Dr. Neil Barnard and a colleague, they actually did a meta-analysis, some 80 studies looking at this. And across the board, whether your blood pressure is, quote, normal or whether it's high, if you get rid of more of the animal products and substitute plant products, your blood pressure goes down.
It's that simple.
It's that simple.
And you've seen it over and over and over.
And I've seen it over and over. And here's the interesting thing. A lot of people say, why? Well, why would that do it? Most people don't realize that the most nutrient-dense foods, highest in magnesium per calorie, highest in calcium per calorie, it's not dairy, it's plant foods. So when you eat more of these plant foods, you get more calcium, more potassium, more magnesium, but it's not just that. This really blew me away. Some years ago, I was asked to give a series of video presentations on high blood pressure before we even came out with the book. So I'm doing this filming. And as I'm doing the research for this series, I start looking even more deeply into these plant foods. I've been using them. My patients are getting off their blood pressure medicines, they're getting off their diabetes medicines, but I'm looking into it because I know professionals are going to be watching this, they're going to want to say why.
Okay.
And the amazing thing that I found out in plant foods, there's something called ACE inhibitory compounds. Now the average person says, well, yeah, ACE inhibitory compounds. These are some of the most powerful drug compounds today. So if someone's taking lisinopril or Prinavil or Trandelapril, there's all these medications that end in pril. These are ACE inhibitors. These ACE inhibitors
that are given to people with high blood pressure.
They're given medications that have these ACE inhibitors in them. What the research now shows is that plant foods, many plant foods, we have a list in the book of like 20 of them that have ACE inhibitory compounds in the plant foods. So you're eating, when you take those plant products, when you're eating buckwheat and broccoli and mushrooms, these are some of them that have these ACE inhibitors, when you're eating those, you're actually taking in small amounts drugs, really, that lower your blood pressure. Now, you're probably, if you're like many of my audiences, Randy, you're
okay.
asking a question right now. You're thinking, boy, I better not eat too much broccoli and mushrooms because I could, my blood pressure would go too low. Doesn't happen. I've never seen anyone, they've never called me, Dr. DeRose, it's, Mrs. Jones in the intensive care unit, and she said she read your book and she was eating all kinds of broccoli and garlic and mushrooms. No, you don't end up in shock by eating a healthy diet.
So the diet, well, let me ask you this. Because I had an internist one time on the show tell me, Randy, the way medicine works, if you're on a drug, you tend to stay there forever. Everybody's afraid to take you off it, especially, he said, blood pressure medications. Because if something happens to you, you're the doctor that took them off blood pressure medications. So how do you even find a doctor that even grabs this concept since you're not that accessible? Do they wean themselves off on their own? Do you have protocols for weaning themselves off? Is it cold turkey? What is it?
No, very interesting question and very important question. What's happening today is physicians are being educated not just on what we used to talk about is step care therapy. That means you step up the blood pressure drugs. Now they're talking, this is in conventional medical circles, step down therapy. Because what's happening is we're ending up with a population of people, and I see them. I mean, people that I hadn't seen before or that other people put on blood pressure medicines, they walk into my office and their blood pressure is 100/60. It's too low. They say, Grandma, whenever she gets up, she gets lightheaded. She's over-medicated. And so doctors are becoming aware of this and they realize it. So I tell people, if you're going to get on this program, talk with your doctor. And then we have a protocol where you're monitoring your own blood pressure and you're keeping in touch with your physician. You're letting them know if your blood pressure is coming down.
If it was your patient, are you able to cold turkey take them off if they follow your nutritional and lifestyle
Some
protocol?
of the medications you cannot stop cold turkey, and we emphasize that in the book. Because some of them you stop at cold turkey and you'll get what we call rebound hypertension. Your blood pressure will go up higher than it ever was before.
And this is outlined in the book?
It's outlined in the book. We mentioned one of the main drugs that does that is something called clonidine. Yeah, very dangerous to stop abruptly.
Okay, so nutrition. So you put people on a plant-based diet?
We put them on. We move them in that direction. We don't say you got to be a total vegetarian, but the more they eat of plant foods, the lower their blood pressure will tend to be. We also still believe the sound data that's out there about sodium. I know there's a lot of naysayers saying, well, you can eat all the salt you want, it doesn't matter. You look at the data, we're eating too much salt as a nation. We've got to decrease it. The New England Journal of Medicine looked at this less than a decade ago. They looked at the best data. They said if we as Americans, we're taking on average about a teaspoon and a half of salt a day. That's the average intake. If we just cut that a half teaspoon, we'd save tens of thousands of lives each year from stroke and heart attack.
So no salt, or very little salt. Just naturally occurring salt in your food?
You know what,
no
Randy,
sea
it's
salt?
easier than that. It's easier than that.
Okay.
It's stop eating so much processed and restaurant foods. And if you're going to do that, look at the label. If there's more sodium than calories in the food, stay away from it. So if there's 200 calories in a serving of this item, and it's got 400 milligrams of sodium, that's a high sodium food. You're not going to eat it. Eat the one, 200 calories, 150 milligrams of sodium, that's fine. Have that.
Okay, so sodium drives up.
Sodium drives up blood pressure, and it causes us to retain more fluid as well.
Is that the reason why it's...
That's part of the mechanism. There's probably a lot more to it because one of the interesting things that happens when you raise your sodium intake, not only does your body have to hold on to more water, but it affects these various hormones that are regulating blood pressure and interacting with the kidneys.
Okay, now for those people that are watching this and they're not going to become a complete vegan, right?
Right.
But they're going to have protein. Does the book outline recommendations for best protein sources? And if so, what are they? Actually,
we highlight a number of these ideal protein sources. They're in the book. We talk about things like chickpeas. We talk about the bean family in general.
But what about any meats, like for people like a chicken or grass-fed beef or fish?
You know, I'll tell you, very simple answer. We've got a whole chapter on there that speaks about pressors, things that raise blood pressure. And here's a simple answer when you talk about any protein source. We are living in a contaminated world.
Okay.
The higher you move up on the food chain, the higher those toxins become concentrated. So simple answer, you're better off eating the small fish that's eating the phytoplankton than eating the big fish that's been living for many years and has eaten other fish in the process.
So small fish, like a sardine or whatever.
Yeah, the smaller.
Nobody likes sardines.
Yeah, but
That's a bad
the shorter,
example.
the shorter the lived, the animal or the creature, and the more naturally it's raised without, artificial chemicals and stuff, the better off the decision's going to be.
Okay, so in 30 days, changing their diet, and you say lifestyle, like lowering your stress, sleeping more, things like that.
Rest is huge. Let me just mention something interesting. We're driving ourselves as a population, most of us. We're not getting enough sleep. When you or I don't get enough sleep, Randy, our body has to ramp up stress hormone levels so we can keep going. If our body can't do it, we're reaching for the caffeine, and the caffeine ramps up those hormones. What happens when those stress hormones go up? Your blood pressure goes up, your blood sugar goes up. So, it's not rocket science. When you start connecting the dots, people read through the book, they say, it's easy. You got all these stories, we got over 100 graphs and tables. Yeah, it's a comprehensive book, but a lot of stories from patients, real life stuff, it really works and it really makes a difference.
Somebody wants to get your book. What's the best way? They go to your website?
They can go to my website, that's compasshealth.net, or they can go right to Amazon and go right there.
They just Google it or put in your name, Dr. DeRose.
DeRose, D-E-R-O-S-E, and put in blood pressure right on Amazon, and you'll find your book will pop right up.
Yeah, but what if somebody's watching this and saying, I've been medications for 10 years. Is it safe to make this transition? And do you have any patients that you know of that were on medications for 10, 15 years and now they're not?
Oh, many people. Yeah, many people that have come through our programs over the years, they're either decreased on their medications or off their medications with this type of approach.
When should somebody take, so if they had an at-home cuff, right? When do they take their blood pressure? What's
We
the best
recommend
time?
3 times a day, and you got to be resting. Don't rush, on your way out the door and say, I better take my blood pressure. It's going to be elevated in that
So
setting.
morning, afternoon, evening?
We have a whole section on how to check your blood pressure. A health professional called me, read that section. They said, I've been checking my blood pressure wrong. This is a health professional, okay? So people don't know some of these simple things. It's all in there.
So 120 over 80 would be considered pretty low and pretty good.
But it could be better, is my
But you
message.
like 110 over
70.
Over 70.
Yeah.
And that's realistic.
It's realistic for many people.
Have you seen people that were in the 150s that now are there?
We've seen them lower their blood pressure by multiple digits. Some of them, we can talk about it in another show, but some of them genetically cannot get their blood pressure down to 110 over 70.
Is that rare?
It's not that rare.
Okay, so like 10% of the population, you guys can't seem to get their blood pressure lower?
It's not just genetics, it's also early life history. It's fascinating stuff, but we can't, I know we can't cover it
don't
today.
have time.
We got to talk about it some other time.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's in the book. Very interesting. You've been watching The Wellness Hour. I'm Randy Alvarez. We'll be right back.